This is NASA TV.
Good morning, everybody. I'm NASA's Dan Hewitt. Welcome from NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston as we are going to spend the next hour talking to the returning astronauts of NASA's SpaceX Crew-4 mission. Here in the room with me, I have Bob Hines, Jessica Watkins, and Kjell Lindgren, and then joining us from Europe, we have Samantha Cristoforetti. It's been just under a week since they returned home with the splashdown back on October 14th after spending 170 days in space. So they're going to answer some of your questions today. We'll have media on the phone bridge, and then if you're following along on social media, you can use the hashtag AskNASA to submit your question. Before we kick things off, I'm going to hand it over to the Crew-4 Commander, Kjell Lindgren, for some quick opening remarks. Kjell.
Thanks, Dan. Well, it's we are delighted to be here. It's great to be back on Earth. We had an extraordinary experience on the International Space Station, initially working with Crew-3, and then with our Expedition 67 colleagues, and then getting to see our Expedition 68 colleagues, Soyuz colleagues, and then Crew-5. And having that opportunity to all work together, getting to spend months on the space station conducting science and research to extend our presence in the solar system and improve life back here on Earth. And man, what an amazing experience from beginning to end, launching on the Crew Dragon rocket, on the Falcon, and then coming home and landing in the Atlantic. So we are so grateful to all of the teams that were involved. Our training team, our operations team, folks sitting on flight console, and people, our teammates all over the world in mission control centers with our international partners, and of course our SpaceX partners who got us to the space station, supported us while we were on orbit, and got us home safely. So obviously a huge thanks to our families as well, friends and families that provided support throughout the training cycle and supported us while we were on orbit. We are really excited to be here back on Earth and excited to answer your questions.
All right, thank you so much, Kjell. So we're going to jump right into it. If you're on our phone bridge, remember, press *1 to get into the question queue, and please address your question to a specific astronaut, as again, we have Samantha joining us from Europe, so we want to try and make that a little bit easier. So we will start off first in our queue is Gina Sunseri with ABC News. Gina?
Out of all the science you did up there, was one that went, boy, this is the one that's going to get us to live on the moon or get us to Mars? You know, what stood out for you for long-term exploration?
Yeah, so, you know, I think that was one of the really neat parts about being a part of the ISS crew, was getting to use the International Space Station as a test bed and as a means of testing different technologies and operational schemes in order to prepare us to go further into the solar system, to the moon, and eventually to Mars. One experiment that comes to mind, one study that we worked on, was called AstroRad. So one of the biggest challenges ahead of us in terms of going deeper into the solar system is the issue of radiation and how we shield and protect our astronauts from that radiation threat. And so working on the AstroRad experiment technology test, it is a vest that the crew members can wear during a solar event, and it enables the crew member to still continue working, still be productive, but be protected during that time frame. And the neat thing about the AstroRad vest that we tried on while we were on orbit is that it will also be on the mannequin that will go up on Artemis 1 here shortly, launching next month. So to have that parallel between that experience on orbit, and then we'll be able to see that vest in the actual environment headed to the moon, and be able to put those pieces together to start building a picture and moving forward with that technology is really exciting.
All right, thank you, Jessica. Next up, we have Elizabeth Howell with Space.com. Liz?
Hello, everybody. Welcome home. This is for Samantha. Can you bring us a bit behind the scenes for your planning for all the costumes that you were bringing up, such as the 2001 costume?
Yes, sure thing. I'm not a big movie watcher, as my crewmates know very well. In fact, I have this running joke, but it's maybe not really a joke, is that I've only watched like 15 movies in my life. But 2001: A Space Odyssey is one that I have actually watched multiple times, and that I really enjoy and appreciate deeply as a work of art, and something that has really influenced our imagination, our visual imagination, when it comes to space. And it's decades old now, and yet it doesn't feel old. It feels still very, very current and valuable. And so, when we plan a mission to space, at least for me, it's always important to, of course, the number one priority is to do your job correctly, to train and perform correctly as a crew member. But I always think a little bit about, what can I bring that bridges that creates a bridge to the broader culture. And so I always had this idea of doing something to celebrate 2001: Space Odyssey. And also I was genuinely curious about whether Velcro shoes would work or not. And so I had this thing in the back of my mind. I had it for a long time. And then it so happened that a few months before launch, I was in Los Angeles, where we did part of our training at the SpaceX facilities out there. And I had a little bit of free time, and I just started wandering through used secondhand fashion shops to see if I could find something that would work as a costume to play that flight attendant. And very last minute, I happened to find that pant dress, something that I would, it's not something that I would buy for myself normally, but it seemed to fit perfectly for that need. Actually, the person at SpaceX who is responsible for making the suits, she was very helpful. Last minute, she did me the favor of making stirrups and a couple of modifications that were needed, and I was able to turn it in last minute so that it could be uploaded. And then when I was in space, I think it was Sergei, one of my Russian crewmates, who had the idea of the location, because it was also not obvious to find a suitable place on space station. You obviously needed a circular hatch, which is only available in the Russian segment. And then, what do you do with the Velcro? But it so happens that there is this module in the Russian segment that worked just perfectly, because it has the, the female Velcro all around the walls. And so I gave it a try. It took a few attempts, but eventually it worked out. And then, of course, our video editor at ESA did a stellar job of putting the video material together. And I was just thrilled.
All right. Our next question comes from Marvin Marshall with the Nighttime News Space Report. Marvin.
Hi, my name is Marvin Marshall from the Nighttime News Space Report on twitch.tv. Welcome back to Earth, everyone. I hope you're all having a great day today. It's great to be able to talk to you guys again, but not moving at 27,500 kilometers an hour this time. Now, this question is from one of my viewers here named Do. Now, for Kjell and anyone else who wants to chime in, what diodes on X-routes did you guys use, and what spectrum of light, if you guys know that? We saw some pictures of the routes, and they looked so healthy. Thank you again. Welcome home, everyone.
Thank you so much. What an amazing opportunity to work on the veggie enclosure, to work on the X-routes project. I had the opportunity during my last mission to work on veggie, and we grew plants in a soil matrix, basically soil contained within little pillows. And this project, X-Roots, was looking at an advanced technology, at least for the space station, of using hydroponics and aeroponics. This is a technology that is scalable, the sizes and requirements that we were going to need for long duration space flight. And so it was really interesting to watch these plants grow, to get to tend. I think we all had the opportunity to work on them and to tend to them, peek in on them on a daily basis and really work with them a couple of times a week. Was really a refreshing experience, literally, because when you would pull down the kind of the accordion enclosure around it, you could just smell earth. You could smell the plants. It was absolutely amazing. We got to grow peas and tomatoes and onions, and so to smell those smells was absolutely amazing. To see something living, growing there in the space station was really an extraordinary experience. I don't know the wavelength of light. It was pink, very pink. Definitely knew when the light was on, because the whole Columbus module would glow in pink. But I think that we all really appreciated the opportunity to work with those plants.
Okay, our next one comes from Allie Heath, or Health, whatever your last name is. I apologize, from My Denver. Allie.
Hi, our question is for Jessica Watkins. We would love to know, what was the hardest thing to adjust to on the space station, and what's the hardest thing to adjust to now that you're back on Earth?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and the answer might actually be the same for both going up to the space station and coming home. And I think that is just the first few days of kind of adaptation where your brain is trying to figure out what's going on. Going up to the station, most of the station felt very familiar. So we have an excellent team of instructors who prepare us diligently to go up to the space station. And when we get up there, we are familiar with the hardware. We understand how to execute the tasks that need to be performed. But in juxtaposition to that familiarity is also this unfamiliarity of the kind of most unfamiliar environment you could find yourself in microgravity. And so trying to kind of marry those two things up and kind of watch your brain pretty quickly adapt to working in 3 dimensions. And your body is adapting to that as well in that process. And so kind of seeing that happen, really kind of, it's almost an out-of-body experience where you can kind of see your brain starting to be able to take corners a little bit better and start to understand that there is really no up or down. It was really kind of a neat experience. And then on the way back, we had a very similar experience where your brain is again trying to remap to actual gravity, to 1G here on Earth. And we are still kind of in the process of that at the moment, but every day you see these kind of huge leaps where your brain and your body are readjusting to life back here on Earth.
Okay, next up we have Marcia Smith with Space Policy Online. Marcia.
Thanks so much for my question. I'd like to ask each of the astronauts what advice they would give to the companies that are building the commercial LEO space stations. What should they be taking into account in their design, either or both, in terms of livability aboard those space stations, and also in terms of making the most efficient use of stations for scientific and technical research? If they had one piece of advice to give to each of the companies, what would they suggest?
Well, I think that is a great question, and I think that is really what we need to be looking at as we move forward. We're trying to take these next leaps into deep space exploration, and I think we need to really start thinking out of the box on a lot of these things. But first and foremost, if we're going to do human exploration, you got to put the human in the equation, right? And so I think new and efficient ways for how we design our habitats, designated habitat modules, as well as just improvements in next generation technologies for the things that we've pioneered here on Space Station. But Space Station is a 20-year-old platform right now, and so those things that we have on there have certainly laid the groundwork, but that's where we pivot to commercial industry to take that next step of innovation and figure out how we can do this better and more efficiently and more sustainably as we move into the deep space exploration. Because some of the things that we have right now, certainly we've built that technology, but we are still very Earth dependent on a lot of these things where we need supplies and continuous supply from Earth. And so we're going to need that kind of innovation and independent thought moving forward. in order to really enable this exploration so that we can be Earth independent and have all of these human life-sustaining technologies on board.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly agree with Bob here that is going to need to be the focus moving forward. I think I would just add from a scientific perspective, certainly one of the places that we enjoyed the most on the ISS is the cupola, being able to look out the window, see the Earth below us, make scientific observations as well, both from the cupola and the wharf window as well. And so having more of those places, more windows, more opportunities for crew members to interact with the environment that they are in, whether that is a view of the Earth or a view of the Moon or even further onto Mars. That ability to make those scientific observations, I think, is really important moving forward.
That's good. And I wanted to see, Sam, is there anything you wanted to add on what you would like to see in a future space station?
I don't know that I have one specific thing, but I think that, and this will probably happen naturally, that there's going to be a transition from an environment that is, first and foremost, the technological environment, and the human, like the astronauts in our case, adapt to it. So I think that we fairly easily, I would say, but it's also our job, we find workarounds to do with what is available in terms of habitability. But if we are going to transition to commercial space stations and have space flyers who maybe don't fly to space as a profession, but maybe fly to space also for their enjoyment, then I think that there will probably have to be a little bit more of a meeting halfway, where it's not only the human that adapts to the environment and the technology, but also a little bit that the environment is built with the human being in mind, which is I think what Bob was saying at the beginning. Probably reaching out to the design community is I believe a great idea. I think designers are very much used to bridge that gap between the function and the use, but also the usability and the pleasure of using an object or a feature. So I'm pretty sure that will happen naturally.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have Mark Carreau with Aviation News and Space. Mark.
Thank you very much. Mine's for Dr. Lindgren. How would you sort of accept, a couple of days ago, the go was given to resume scheduled spacewalks, and so I'm just, not trying to connect so much to that, but noting that as being important to the maintenance of the space station. And so I'm sort of wondering what your assessment of its structural health at this point and its potential for science and technology development potential into the future.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. Of course, the ability to spacewalk, to conduct spacewalks is integral to our ability to maintain the space station. When you step back and look at it, it's amazing that this vehicle has been flying for over 20 years, that the very first elements were launched over 20 years ago. And when I think about a car here on the Earth that's 20 years old, they're typically in pretty bad shape. And the space station certainly visually is showing its age, but we have an amazing team of engineers here on the ground, both here at Johnson Space Center and centers all over the world, that are looking at the health of the vehicle, our ability to provide spares, our ability to do the maintenance, and to preserve its ability to serve as a platform for science and research. And so understanding the studies that have been done and the analyses that have been conducted, I think that the space station is in really good shape, and I know that we are all excited as a community to see it continue to serve as a platform for exploration and for preparation for our mission to the Moon and ultimately to Mars. And so, of course, there's an incredible amount of investment that has gone into the space station, not only by the U.S. taxpayer, but by communities and nations all over the world. And we want to continue to see a return on that investment and to utilize and leverage this platform as long as we can. But to do it in a safe way And so I know that, again, that we have teams that continue to look at it and its viability into the future. And I think we're all very excited to see use into the late 20s up into 2030.
Okay, we're going to jump over and take a couple of social media questions. Just a reminder, though, for folks on the phone bridge, if you do have another question, press *1 and we can get you back in the queue. This one I'm going to send over to Bob, and this is from Swami. What were the first sensations after returning to Earth and taking a breath of fresh air?
Oh yeah, that is one of those things that is seared into my my memory. So right after splashdown, I think we were all kind of surprised when we first splashed down that it wasn't really as dynamic or provocative as we thought in the capsule, bobbing around in the ocean there. But once SpaceX retrieved the capsule and we got hoisted up onto the deck, and they wheel us up and they crack the hatch. I just remember there's just a very light rush of air that came in, and the smell of that saltwater air. And we were so blessed to land on, I think, a 75-degree day in Florida with very low humidity. It was phenomenal. And so that first sensation was like, oh, it's so nice to be home, because we've been smelling the same air for the last 6 months. So getting a breath of fresh air out there over the ocean was absolutely spectacular. And then they pull us out onto out of the capsule, and we kind of get our feet down on the deck as we transition over to a gurney, and that's where we noticed. That was the first time I noticed, anyway, that the ship's rocking. So certainly a little wobbly on our feet, and the teams do a great job taking care of us there. But that first breath of fresh air was absolutely spectacular. On orbit, Kjell alluded to it earlier. We get the smells of some of the the plants out of the veggie compartment. But we also had some fresh fruit sent up, and I just remember having a physical reaction to the first orange that I smelled, and I did not anticipate it or realize how much I missed that. And so, just all those nature smells and all those senses were just absolutely phenomenal. So, kind of unleashing, the Earth unleashing that on us when that hatch opened was absolutely amazing.
That's awesome.
Thanks, Bob. Okay, this one, I'm going to go Kjell and Samantha. How was this mission different from your other mission? Start with Kjell.
Sure. It was an extraordinary mission, and just like the last one, it was so much fun to see the space station again, to be reintroduced to that weightless environment. Some things were new, but a lot had stayed the same. And the space station, it's kind of a visual assault initially, because it is so busy, so complex. There's so much stuff in there. So you're taking that in. You're taking in the smell of space. You're taking in the weightlessness, so that the physical component, and so really a special experience to be reintroduced to the space station, and then to quickly acclimate to that environment. The biggest difference, and I think one of the greatest joys, is the crew. And so for me, it was a completely different crew than my last mission. And so getting to be up there with Farmer and Waddy and watch them acclimate to the environment for the very first time, to be up there with Samantha and with our Russian colleagues, was a lot of fun. And so different crew from my last one, but that's what makes, I think, these missions so special, is the people that you're up there with, and the team that you're working with on the ground. Sam?
Your mic's muted.
I was just saying that I feel very much the same about the crew. That's what makes every mission absolutely unique. And, I think I was blessed with amazing crewmates throughout, both my Crew-4 crewmates who are present here and all the people that we cross paths with on orbit. As far as the differences, I think I had an immediate feeling that the station has become busier. There is more stuff. You just have this immediate visual impact that there is more equipment. Every little available space is now used. I thought that space station was busy last time, but I hadn't seen anything yet. Sometimes it's also a challenge. The habitability is more challenging for sure, and also the daily activities and deconflicting all the daily activities. That it's definitely challenging, but it's a good challenge to have. I think. I mean, we want space station to be used to the maximum of its potential. And so it was great to see that. And of course, now we have 4 USOS crew members. So the non-Russian part of space station has 4 crew members now, which means a whole extra work day every day of one person. So again, 25% more or 30% more, depending how you want to see it, more activities. So just a very, very busy. I think it gave me a sense of a more mature laboratory where things are going with a much faster pace and with a lot more diverse, advanced facilities available for science.
All right, we'll do one more social question for right now. This one's from Julie, and I'll send this one to Wadi. Can we use any sustainable practices from the space station here on Earth?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question, and the answer is a resounding yes. After having spent 6 months up there and getting a real sense for all of the ways that the team on the ground and the on-orbit part of the team is contributing to the sustainability of the station that can be applied to back here on Earth. One, in general, I think the philosophy with which we maintain and operate the International Space Station, I think, is an important one. We have a kind of philosophy where, in general, we spend about 30% of our time, of our kind of timelined crew time on orbit, is spent doing maintenance of the station. And then about 70% of the time, the rest of the time, is doing science and other operations. But I think that if we took that type of philosophy, that type of mentality, and applied it to the Earth and our preservation and sustainability of the Earth, I think we would end up with different results and just have a different focus. So I think even just that overarching philosophy of operating the station has really important applications. In terms of actual more specific examples, one is the water recycling that we are able to accomplish on orbit. So I think we are at about 96% of our water that we are able to reclaim and recycle and use the next day. And so being able to take that moisture out of the atmosphere off of our bodies and then filter it and clean it and then be able to use it to drink and to use. That type of technology, I think, has really important applications to places on the Earth where clean, fresh water is not as available. And equally, when we think about food security, Kjell mentioned X-roots a bit earlier, but that type of technology, that hydroponics, aeroponics, in places where fertile soil is not as abundant, being able to come up with pursue technologies that enable food security in those areas and help develop greenhouses that would enable that. Those types of technologies that we're developing on the ISS have really important applications to sustainability on Earth.
Thank you. And keep sending in those questions using hashtag AskNASA. I will try and get to a few more in this, but these 3 are going to be sticking around after and answering some more for you on Twitter. We're going to jump back over to the phone bridge now for some follow-ups. We'll start off with Marvin Marshall. I almost call him Marvin the Martian every single time, with Nighttime News Space Report. Marvin?
Thank you, Dan. Hi again, Marvin Marshall here from the Nighttime News Space Report. Now, this question is for everybody. It's from one of my viewers named Cassie T. She wants to know, for all of you here, how was there and what was your favorite meal aboard the space station? Thank you again.
Start us off, Bob.
That's a good question. So one of the, the food is obviously a very important piece, not only just from general nutrition and that kind of thing, but also from a morale standpoint. And we're fortunate to have a very large variety of food and a menu that we can kind of customize a little bit. And we even have some allowances for some personal favorites that we're allowed to have sent up while we're up there. And so having that variety is really helpful. One of the little things that I really liked was just having some hard candy to suck on and have just to kind of give some that fresh fruit kind of flavor or something like that. But the variety was really, really important. I think I was kind of a lasagna guy for the most part, so we had that opportunity, and thankfully we had Samantha along that brought a plethora of olive oil along, so we had all kinds of things to choose from there. But I would defer to Kjell and Wadi because they were very innovative with what they did with the food, and some of it was pretty spectacular, both visually and otherwise.
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do, well, first of all, putting anything in a tortilla made it at least 10% more delicious. So we did a lot of that. And one example of that was we had a burger patty available to us. And so we put the burger in the tortilla. And then I like to add a little bit of macaroni and cheese on top of the burger, and just a dab of barbecue sauce.
Whataburger!
Exactly. And so it kind of became a thing.
So the Wadi burger was always spectacular.
Yeah.
I became notorious for putting more food into a tortilla than was probably wise.
Or possible.
Or possible. Only possible in zero-G.
Right.
And so I'd like to put a meat and then some type of a side, generally rice. There were a couple of times, and so every time I would do it, these guys would just shake their heads because it didn't look like it was going to fit. But I made it fit. And then one night, Bob was witness to the triple-decker where I put an extra side in there. And he claims that I unhinged my jaw to be able to eat that, but
we have video evidence.
It all worked. My favorites, actually, maple muffin tops, which was one of the breakfast foods, and one of the few baked items that we have. That was a favorite from last time and persisted as a favorite this time. And then I really liked oatmeal with brown sugar. That was kind of a breakfast treat for me. Those were my favorites.
And over to Sam.
Yeah, I was a little bit spoiled because I had actual food pouches that were made specifically for me based on my requests and taste. And so those were my favorite, I would say. And probably two stood out. One was a main meal. It was a spelt salad with little tuni, asparagus, and other vegetables. And as Bob mentioned, I had an ample supply of Italian olive oil, and so I used to put a lot of olive oil on it. And then the other was more like either breakfast or dessert. It was like a yogurt pudding, freeze-dried, and it was chocolate flavored, and it had a lot of very delicious fruit in it.
Okay, next up on our phone bridge, Elizabeth Howell with Space.com. Liz?
Hello, I'd like to bring this back to Samantha, please. Can you talk about your busy few days as the first European female commander of the space station, just what that was like and all of the activities that were going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I'm very grateful and honored that I had that opportunity for a short time to serve as commander of the space station. I would say, practically speaking, it's not like it changed a lot, just because I had been throughout the mission responsible for the activities on the US OS or the US segment. And when I say responsible, of course, I mean from the point of view of the crew. We all know that space station is actually run by the flight director on the ground, and we had a stellar lead flight director. So big shout out to her. But of course, when you do become commander, you kind of have in mind that bad day when something bad happens and there is an emergency on space station, and maybe there might be a situation in which you are called upon to make decisions that affect the safety of the crew. And so that's what was mostly on my mind on this couple of weeks. Then, of course, fortunately, nothing like that happened. And I think there were mostly 2 weeks devoted to handing over to the incoming crew. We had our crewmate, Frank Rubio, who had come up on Soyuz as part of the first crew swap with the commercial crew. And so we had an opportunity to have a pretty long handover with him of 2 to maybe even 3 weeks. And then the last week we had our our friends of Crew-4 come up, including the Russian cosmonaut Anna Kikina, so the very first cosmonaut to fly in a U.S. commercial vehicle. So that was exciting, and she's also a very good friend and a person that I greatly admire and like. And then of course Koichi, Nicole, and Josh. And with them, of course, we had a pretty short handover of about a week, which is a good time. I mean, it's not too short, it's not too long, but definitely short enough that you have to make sure you make a good use of the time you have with those guys to set them up for success.
Okay, next up we have Allie Heath, My News Denver. Allie?
One more question. Is this a little bit better? I think we were wondering how you guys keep your sanity on the space station, given that it's such a confined space and you're with each other for so long.
Allie, can you repeat that real quick? You got a little broken up.
Yes, is this a little bit better?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, we were wondering how you guys were able to keep your sanity on the space station, given it's such a confined space and you're with the same group of people for so long.
Waddy burgers, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, very integral to that, you know, keeping our sanity is the crew, right? Like we all get along really well. We were really fortunate to have such an amazing crew. So we always had lots of things to talk about. Obviously, any long duration mission, no matter what you're doing, you're going to have some frustrations. You're going to have road bumps along the way. So having a crew that is that you can vent to, and then that's also understanding of our own little flaws and idiosyncrasies and tolerant of those things is really important. Thank you all for that. But the other things, Waddy talked about, windows being, scientifically pertinent and, being able to do observations to that. But having the opportunity to decompress and go to a spot like the cupola and look outside and just look at the wonderful beauty of our planet, 100% helps with that. You can. It was just such a great place to go and recharge, and I think some of the most special moments of our mission are when we are sitting down in the cupola looking at some spectacular sight, whether it be the amazing aurora, some cloud formations, some rocks for our geology friends out there. Just those opportunities to really spend time together were really, really important. And yes, it's a very busy place. We're doing amazing science and we're working hard every day. But those opportunities to just recharge and spend time together as a crew just were really special and really help keep that efficiency and that productivity when the work has to be done.
And I'll just add to that. I think that kind of like my last mission, it was several months in when I kind of stopped and thought, like, man, we have been cooped up in this same volume with these same people for 3 months, 4 months, and it feels very natural. And I never felt claustrophobic or confined. It just felt like, hey, this is a great group of folks. We've been working together in preparation. We've been working together up here for several months, and it just works. When we're all looking out for each other, I think that it makes things run very smoothly, and we were very efficient and got work done, but we could rely on each other for help and for a shoulder to lean on. It was spectacular and pretty amazing how long you go before you kind of recall, like, oh my goodness, I mean, we've been doing this for 4 months and really not thought about it. So, yeah.
I agree.
There were a lot of dad jokes, however. Just put that out there.
They were great.
They were awesome.
Uh-huh.
One thing I think that's integral to that, though, and this has applications elsewhere, right, is I think we become very deliberate about when we're doing something, thinking about how it affects others first, right? And that is something that is super important. And that obviously has applications down here on Earth and how we all get along and that kind of thing. So I find that to be really important, is that when I'm doing something, I go, how does this affect Waddy's space? Am I getting into her space? Am I getting into her habits or anything like that? And is it going to affect her negatively? And if so, maybe I should talk to her about it first. So I think that's a really, important aspect of it. And it's something that we train to, and it is a very deliberate piece of our training to look at those kinds of behaviors and those kind of considerations in order for us to be productive over a long duration mission.
That's great.
I thought you were going to throw in a dad joke. It turned into a dad lesson. Thank you, Beth.
Don't encourage me.
There's a master class for dad jokes that Kjell and I are putting together.
All right, next up we have Marcia Smith, Space Policy Online. Marcia.
Thanks so much. My question is for Samantha. I was wondering if you could talk about your spacewalk. How different was it than what you expected? Were there things that were easier or harder to do? And as one of the few non-Russians who's trained in the Russian EVA suit, are there any pointers that you would give to the two U.S. companies that are designing new U.S. suits?
Yes, an interesting question. So first of all, I feel very privileged that I have had the opportunity over the course of my career as an astronaut to train in both the NASA suit and the Russian suit. I trained in the NASA suit for my previous space flight, so 8-10 years ago. I did not have an opportunity to do so this time, but I had an opportunity to train again for the second time in the Russian suit, and then I was thrilled that this time I have an opportunity to actually put all that training to work and have that experience of going out of the door. I would say I would encourage anyone building or designing a new suit to really take a good look at both those suits, because it seems to me that both have pros and cons, and designing a suit that has the best of the EMU and the Orlan, it would be the perfect suit. And in terms of the experience, it was very challenging. I would say, especially physically, very demanding. It's a suit that works at a higher pressure, on the higher end of pressure compared to the EMU, which has a number of operational advantages, but also makes it harder to operate. And I'm obviously a pretty small person, a small female. I'm not on the upper end of physical strength for obvious reasons, and so that was definitely challenging. Mentally, though, I would say I felt quite at ease from the beginning, and it's something I didn't know. I didn't quite know what to expect. I've heard of people getting disoriented when they first go out the door. I have heard that usually they try to time the exit with the orbital eclipse with night, so that you get less disoriented. But we did end up accumulating a little bit of delay in our pre-egress ops, and so we ended up getting out of the hatch during daylight, and so I was a little bit concerned. Is this going to work? Is this going to disorient me? But actually felt, in terms of the environment and being in the suit, it felt very natural to me. It felt like in training, like in the pool, and I could just not worry about the environment and the suit itself, and just really focus on the task. I was very much task focused. It was my first and so far only EVA, and my focus was really on trying to not be a burden, but contribute to the spacewalk, and not to do any mistake, and obviously be safe. And so I was very much task focused throughout the entire EVA. And then towards the end, we were called back before we completed the entire initially scheduled timeline. And I guess at that point, my lead spacewalker, Oleg, he decided to take some time coming back into the airlock, which, now looking back, it was an amazing opportunity to just, hang out for a few minutes out there, and, not having anything to do anymore, and just enjoy that very special view of, I remember just the Earth flowing beneath me, which was on the one hand familiar, as you see it through the window as well, but just not the same, because you have that much broader view and just that awareness that you are actually outside.
All right, looks like we've got time for two more. We'll go now to Gina Sunseri, ABC News. Gina.
We've done several stories on whether you sleep better or worse in space. What were your experiences? Better sleep, worse sleep?
That's so everybody looks at me on this one for some reason. No, so I actually had, it took me a while to adjust to sleep up there. I think we're just conditioned to certain things down here. One of them is laying down when you sleep, which obviously is not an option up there. We do have crew quarters. We have a sleeping bag that we sleep in, and you can kind of cinch yourself down in there. But it just took me maybe a month or so to adapt to that and really get used to not only the workday and the proximity of the workday to the time that you go to sleep, and not really having that wind down time took some adaptation for me. But once I got it figured out, it was glorious. One, you don't have the pressure points on you, that you might have when you're in the bed or anything like that. And then the other is the crew quarters are, pretty quiet. They're very dark, so it's like having blackout curtains all over the place. And you can definitely sleep pretty spectacularly, as some of my colleagues may know. But it is really nice. All that being said, getting back home, and when I finally got back to my house and got to lay down in my bed, that was just an absolutely spectacular moment. Because I did find on orbit that there were times where my body was craving the ability to actually lay down. And you can't do that, because if you get up close to a wall or something like that, that contact instantly makes you start drifting away from it. And it's almost tantalizing, because you're like, oh, I just want to lay down. And as you touch it, you start drifting away from it, and it's almost frustrating. But yeah, I definitely got my fair share of solid sleep up there, so that was amazing.
All right, and then our last question for the day, David Curley with Discovery Channel. David?
Thank you, Dan. You guys talked about it a little bit today, and your pre-departure. Plants, you did a number of experiments with plants. What's your sense? Do you think it's going to work at scale, growing plants in space? Do you see them as food, environmental control items? And what did it do to psyche? You talked a bit about that. Could you expand on that? Anybody that wants to. Thank you.
I think all of the above. I think that the ability to grow plants in the space station, the test bed that we have right now, with the idea of really maturing that technology and having plants as an integral part of a long-duration space flight is very important. So plants serve as a psychological benefit. The opportunity to, I'm imagining a module that just has all plants in it, and a greenhouse module that you could go into, tend to the plants, spend time in there. I mean, that would be, I think that would be phenomenal here on Earth. And to have that capacity in a long duration mission would be phenomenal. To go in there, to take care of plants, to be surrounded by something green and growing, and to be surrounded by that smell of life would be amazing. So there's a psychological benefit, as millions of gardeners would testify to. There is a environmental benefit. So plants could help us as an integral part of an environmental control and life support system to provide oxygen, to scrub the atmosphere naturally of carbon dioxide, and to scrub it of other contaminants. So there is an ECLS component. And then finally, there's that food component. If we are able to garden sustainably using something like the hydroponics or aeroponics that we're investigating with X-Roots, we have the ability to grow crops. We're growing, as we left behind a tomato plant that had just started to produce little small cherry tomatoes, and it was amazing. It was so much fun to see those growing, to see something recognizable that ultimately could be a food source, to add that fresh food to our menu. You heard how spectacular it was to have fresh fruit come up on a cargo vehicle, to smell an orange, to taste an orange or a grapefruit, and to be able to grow something that we are able to eat as a part of a daily meal would be phenomenal. So I think those are three very important aspects of growing a crop for long-duration space flight, and I absolutely think that it's doable. You know, we are at that stage now where we're really trying to identify systems that are scalable, and I think that this is a system that would work, and we look forward to seeing that mature into a gardening module.
Yeah, it was actually pretty spectacular too, because I mean, I am not a green thumb by any stretch. My wife will attest to that. But just having the opportunity to engage with the plants and have something up there. I mean, that was the only other living object in space, at that time. And so we're nurturing that thing along and encouraging its growth. And so to see all that and know that we're kind of colleagues, with these plants, where they're helping us and we're helping them go along and survive here in space was pretty amazing. So the psychological aspect of it is it can't be understated, I don't think, and certainly the sustainability that it provides for long duration missions is really important.
But I'll just take that back to the Earth, and how truly magical the Earth is. To grow these plants required so much intention and forethought and preparation. The veggie enclosure with this X-root system that delivers a certain amount of water, that has a very specific nutrient mix, that require daily observations and curation to allow these plants to grow. And I think we're all familiar. I mean, you drop a seed into the grass, and for those of us that garden and pulling weeds out of the garden, things just grow on the earth. And it's truly magic that a life form is encapsulated in a seed that can fall on the ground and produce offspring is an incredible thing. And it happens by accident here on the earth, where it is in space. We have to be so intentional about it, so careful about it, and it really kind of brings us full circle to look back at the earth and understand what an incredible place it is that we live upon, and really reinforces this idea that it is our spaceship. It is all of our spaceship, and we need to do a better job to take care of it. Good words.
All right. We will end it on that note. Thank you, Kjell. Thank you, Wadi. Thank you, Farmer. Thank you, Samantha, for joining us from Europe. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in today to welcome home and ask some questions of Crew-4. Just wrapped up 170 days in space. Stick around on Twitter. Use the hashtag AskNASA. These three will stick around here and answer a few more of your questions. But with that, we will call it a day. Everyone enjoy the rest of your week, and thanks for tuning in.